Don Mazzella here for Small Business Digest. We have a very good guest with us. He's just come out with a new book, which I for one, am looking forward to reading. Jaime Finchbaugh. Ball. Am I
Yep.
getting close?
Yep, you got it.
Okay. Uh, has his own company, and he joins us today. Jaime, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Really glad to be part of small business and the community you share with.
Well, Jamie, as we ask all our guests, first tell us a little bit about yourself personally, then a little bit about your company, and finally a website and a little bit about your book, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I grew up quite literally in manufacturing and in small business, starting on the manufacturing shop floor when I was a kid. Um, which brought me into engineering, engineer by education, and then that brought me into a bunch of operating companies. And I've had the great opportunity to be a part of a lot of company transformations, either from the inside or helping from the outside. Um, Helped Harley Davidson from the inside, Chrysler way back when, DT Energy. And then I've worked with over 300 companies as a either consultant, board member, coach, or advisor over those many years, trying to build really sustainable cultures and systems and leaders that operate effectively. Um, I left the executive team at Corvo Semiconductor 2 years ago and started J Flinch, which is really an advisory and coaching firm. Work with key executives and transformation teams to help build stronger, more resilient companies through the right cultures and capabilities. And have my latest book coming out, which mostly from my coaching, called People Solve Problems, which is all about building the capabilities, the culture, and the right kind of leaders that solve both today's and tomorrow's problems.
Hmm. Well, when I knew you were coming on the program, excuse me, I'd like to ask you a question, which I haven't asked anybody else. So if you choose not to answer, it's okay. But change, no matter what, affects people. Some positively, but it's been my experience most negatively. How do you deal with that issue?
So,
But before you go any further, show the name of your book, put it up there, and where people can get it.
yeah, so People Solve Problems. Subtitle is The Power of Every Person, Every Problem, Every Day. Um, it's available on Amazon for Kindle, hardcover. Still hoping to get audiobook to come along with that, or on my website, which is jflinch.com. They can find links to the book there as well. So change is an interesting thing. When you ask people about change and they say, "Would you like things to be better?" Pretty much everybody says, "Yeah, of course I'd like things to get better." And then you start introducing the idea of transformation or change, and they get hesitant. And that's because what they fear is that the fear won't be better for them. um, that it will bring worse things. And unfortunately, some of that is based on reality, right? They've experienced change that wasn't for the better. And some of it is based on just that the imagined fear is worse than the imagined goodness that comes out of it. So some of it is our imagination gets the best of it, gets the best of us. There are some fundamental countermeasures to that experience. One of which is the more you empower people to lead their own change, the more they create something that they desire. The less they are a victim of that change. So this requires, coaching and leadership and all sorts of other things, but the more we can empower people, not unbridled, this is not about abdicating to people, but the more we empower them to create the change, it's not just that they're a part of it, but they create something that they do want to happen. Second, the more we can make change an experiment, meaning that if it doesn't work, we undo it, right? We test ideas, we probe, we make small, safe changes so that, oh yeah, that didn't work. Okay, let's just undo it. Go back to what we were doing, try something different. Instead of big, huge leaps that we can't undo, that's much scarier. And then I think another key ingredient of overcoming people's fear of bad change is that the leaders go first, right? It's not, I go to a lot of organizations and they'll say, oh, management's 100% behind us. Well, behind is still behind. Leadership is out in front. And it's not like I'm telling all of you should change. It's I'm changing myself and I'm part of this change. It will affect me too. And that, when leaders take that approach where they're on the front lines or they're out in front of the change, it's not change happening to people, it's happening with them. And that's a much greater comfort that they're not in it alone.
Well, let's go to your book. What is can you give us one or two of the ideas in your book so people want to read it?
Yeah. So I think the first premise of the book is that most every organization I've ever worked with has gone through some problem solving training. They try to get people to be better problem solvers. And they teach them tools and templates and all this other stuff. But it's kind of like teaching people how to properly lift a dumbbell or use the exercise equipment when the real problem is getting them to the gym. Like that's the problem we have to solve. And so the book is about, regardless of whether you even have a problem solving tool, that people are facing problems each and every day, right? Whether they're using tools or not doesn't really matter. But there are things that make us better problem solvers. There are things that leaders do that make us better problem solvers. There are behaviors that make us better problem solvers. And there are capabilities that make us better problem solvers. And so the book goes through these things, these elements, with the premise of twofold. One, regardless of what tools we use, these behaviors and capabilities are useful in all of those circumstances. And two, we are kind of blind to our own problem solving gaps because we've been doing it since we were infants, right? I mean, one of the huge things about the human condition is that we are naturally problem solvers. We grow up as infants solving problems. We get in school, we solve problems. We start our jobs, we solve problems. It is just an essence of the human existence. And so the variation and we have strengths and weaknesses and blind spots, and we kind of have to unlock some of that to see about getting better from where we are today. Right? We've kind of taken for granted our ability to solve problems, and yet this is how we get through all the challenges we face each and every day. It's one of the most core skills that every single organization faces.
Yeah, it seems to me a lot of people seem to want to go along. Well, I've been doing it this way for 5 years. Why should I change? How do you get people to see the benefits of change?
So I think for starters, it's articulating, and they have to be a part of this. This goes back to my point of people being empowered to help create it, is you really have to paint a clear picture around how things could be better, right? So once you do that, it's not just here, accept this change, but what do you get out of this?
Mhm.
What comes out the other end? There's actually some interesting research around people that go to the hospital for a heart-related event. Right? So not necessarily a heart attack, but some reason, right? They went to the hospital. The heart is not where it needs to be from a health standpoint. And if you tell people change or die, there's actually very few people percentage-wise will actually adopt different lifestyle behaviors. But if you work with them on having more energy or being able to do things you weren't able to do or sleeping better or some of the other things that come from the same changes, those positive benefits lead to a significant higher percentage of changing behaviors. So, so first and foremost, people have to see a positive future that is better than what they need today. Second, they need to understand where they are right now isn't as good as it could be, right? Or as bad. We like to say hatred of the current reality. And the reason hatred is so important is that if we just don't like something, we'll complain about it, right? We'll moan about it. But we won't really do anything hard about it, right? When we decide we hate the current condition, now we're willing to sort of let go of one rope to go grab the next. And so we have to look at current reality for what it really is. I can recall just some coaching conversations I've had in the past couple of weeks with an organization that knows they want to adopt a particular change, but they've been really slow to do it. And they keep telling themselves, well, what if we screw it up? And we keep returning to the fact that where they are today isn't producing good results. So like what's the risk that the change is worse than what you're doing today? That we have to face with a clarity of a mirror. And then the third ingredient is the help to get there, right? So where are we going? Is that actually better? Hatred of current reality, is that, do we really want to stay where we are? And then, what are the first steps? We don't need a detailed recipe to get all the way to the ideal state, to get all the way to what good looks like, but we need some help to get us moving, right? So whether that's resources or training or just a coach or whatever it is, letting people know that they aren't in it alone. It's not just go figure it out, but they have some support, they have some help, and that they can take some steps and go from there. And so that's whether it's providing comfort or experience or just higher confidence that they can actually make progress. They need to know that there are steps that they can take. So those are the three most important ingredients. And what's really key about that is you miss any one of those three things and you're not going to get change, right? If people don't know what good looks like, you could say go and they scatter in 1,000 different directions. If they don't have a hatred of the current reality, you could say go, but they're not going to let go of the anchor holding them where they are. And if you don't have a pathway, or at least the first steps moving you forward, well, then they're just going to acknowledge that there's a gap and be frustrated by it. So all three of those ingredients are important. If you miss any one of them, you end up with some undesired outcomes.
And the name of your book again?
People Solve Problems. Okay. That's all about people.
Well, Jamie, what I'm interested is if you read the polls, whether it's 35 or 40% of people say they want to leave their current jobs.
Mm-hmm.
It says that somewhere along the line we've missed the mark. If would you? You're nodding your head. Would you care to comment on that?
Yeah, well, let me approach that. There's from two different angles. One from the employee, one from the employer. From the employee standpoint, And I've had many conversations with people, even executives who are dissatisfied with their work and want to leave. So they're willing to take the huge risky leap of quitting their job to go take another job that they hope that they like, right? They don't know that they'll like, they just hope that they like. They haven't experienced it yet. Um, and so there's a reason why they dislike their current job. It could be their relationship with their boss, it could be what their job is. And what I find fascinated is they're willing to take this huge risk of leaving their company to go join another company in hopes of making it better, but they're not willing to take the risk of challenging what they have currently and trying to make that better. It's like, oh, well, go have a heart to heart with your boss. Go change jobs within the company. Go, don't, you don't want to work 18 hours a day, only show up for 12 or only show up for 8. What happens if you get fired? Well, you were going to quit anyway, so who cares? So I'm always fascinated by how few people are willing to take this risk of leaving, but not willing to take the risk of trying to solve it where they are. And sometimes they just don't know how to. And so it's about reframing the problem. But if they clearly frame the problem, which is one of those core capabilities of problem solving, reframe the problem around what they really want, it's sometimes impressive how much they can create that where they are. Now, from the employer side, they also have to solve this problem because they have, large percentages of the population are dissatisfied. We're in what's being called the age of discontent, but also the age of the Great Resignation is one of the terms being thrown around, with lots of people leaving. Some are leaving without knowing where they're going to end up. Some are leaving for something they expect to be better. And employers do need to solve this problem. One of the things that, in terms of capabilities around problem solving, is understanding that there isn't one reason, right? There's numerous reasons. And so breaking down the problem, understanding all the different reasons, some of it is about compensation, some of it is about working conditions, some of it is about job opportunities, some of it is about localized culture, meaning, what is the culture within my team, let alone the company. And so, companies tend to try to solve these things by trying to pull one lever, right? We'd grab one lever, pull it really hard, hope that it solves the whole problem, and not realize that it's not one problem, it's actually 10 different problems. And they kind of have to break it down, understand the different reasons, and start to solve it, both at a systemic level, but also at an individual level. And this is where, frontline managers, or just managers in general, have to understand and really build their management systems around what's not working for their teams. But the number one thing companies can do broadly around this bigger problem is make the problem transparent. Acknowledge that you see it, right? Don't pretend you don't. Oh, it's a great company to work at, and not go, but we have a lot of problems in the same breath, right? It's like, yeah, we love our company, we're very proud of what we've done, and we've got a lot of problems. Don't pretend you don't see it. Make the problems transparent, talk about them, put them out there in the open, at least acknowledge to the teams that, to the employees, that you see these problems, that you have some empathy for the fact that they exist. And second, help employees solve them themselves, or help managers solve them themselves. Again, there's no one policy that you can set that's going to solve all of this. But, get to work, right? People don't need perfect working conditions to stick in their jobs, but they need to see that there's progress. And if you don't start breaking down these problems, making things a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, then what hope do we have, right? So employees don't need everything, every little complaint they have to go away in order to stay, But if they don't even see forward progress, then what are they sticking around for? So employers have to, make the problems transparent and start to engage people in solving them, even if they don't have all the answers.
Well, then let me follow on with another question. Well, for the person that's leaving one job to go another, usually in the recruiting, a recruiter will go and try to get the person from the competing company to fill. But is it that we are simply not creating the types of jobs that make people interesting, or
I don't think it's the types of jobs. I think it's the type of working environments. Most people, in the end, they will state, they'll talk about salary and they'll talk about job titles. And I'm working with one leader who's losing um, one of his key employees because somebody's offered him another job title. Um, but along with those job titles come other promises, and it's in a lot of cases it's not about income. Sometimes it is. I'm not going to pretend that's not a real factor, but it's about their ability to contribute, their ability to learn, their ability to be engaged, the culture, the environment, the work responsibilities, and and especially for most employees don't want to be stagnant. They want to feel like they have things that they can learn, things that they can grow, ways in which they can contribute. And unfortunately, particularly through the pandemic, while we've needed all of our employees to be engaged, out of out of fear and speed, we've actually seen companies consolidate their decision making and their control in order to try to think that, well, we need to get through this, instead of go the other way, which is, hey, we have more fires than ever. We're going to need more employees to bring ideas, to be creative, to go engage stuff. And so this should be an opportunity for people to take on more responsibility, grow, expand, be engaged. What we seem to be observing is in many cases the opposite. And so, understand what people really want, and there's only so many job titles and only so much money we can throw around. There are other things, and if that's not enough, then so be it, right? If you lose somebody because somebody's just going to pay them a whole lot more, then go focus on the next person, but give them the opportunity to grow and develop and fulfill an engaging work environment.
Jamie, we unfortunately have just a few minutes left. Your book again and how people can get it.
People solve problems. They can find it at my website at jflinch.com, or they can find it on Amazon and hopefully independent booksellers and others as well.
Okay. You have about 2 minutes. What would you like to leave our audience with?
Well, I guess, in the spirit of the big challenge questions that you asked, and how sometimes powerless people feel around them, is that we can be a victim or we can grab the power. And the power is, even if you can only control 5% of the outcome, focus on that part, right? The last couple of years have made a lot of us feel pretty powerless, but what's the part you can control? What's the part you can influence? Put all of your energies into that, and that gives you far more power than being a victim and focusing on the parts that we can't even influence.
Oh, that's a great ending. That's really great. Thank you so much for being
Thanks
with us.
for having me.